Welcome to this crucial and most critical topic, which is resume building. And at the end of all the different certifications, programs, courses, graduations, and everything that we do, it is when it is time for us to start applying for jobs. That's when it all boils down to the resume itself, right? So, of course, this is something for which you will find a lot of information on the internet, a lot of experts, a lot of different companies providing you support in creating a resume, etc. However, all of that will be beneficial to you only if you all know what is required in a resume, what is it that a recruiter will be looking at when resumes comes across to them. And so thereby we're hoping that this webinar or workshop gives you those key insights which will help you have that information in your mind, so that even if you're using templates, working with resume builders, you actually know what your own individual resume needs to look like, right? So that's really what we are aiming to do as part of this webinar. And so as Abhishek mentioned, my name is Tanu, and I'm an HR training as well as a talent acquisition professional. Have been in the talent acquisition field for over 10 years, as well as part of core business teams where I have recruited and hired several individuals across different levels, right from freshers to senior level. So that's a little bit about that. Now, the agenda of the session, we're going to look at the importance of building a good resume. Why do we really need it? So that we are very clear in our minds. What to include in a resume and how to structure the same. A little bit about what are the different topics or elements to bring about in your profile or resume. How to format it. I'll also be talking about 8 things not to include in your resume, because there's so much of information out there, you may get confused and then end up including information which is something that is really not relevant or what the recruiters may not go in for. We'll touch a bit upon what is ATS, Applicant Tracking System, and also some high-level tips on how to create an ATS resume. Now, as these are all extremely intensive topics, I am just going to touch upon all of this at a very high level. And if there is anything further that is required, that is probably something that we can take it up separately. I will also be talking a little bit about using Chat GPT while creating your resumes. So toward the end of the session, I will open it up for a Q&A. Where I can take up any questions that any of you may have, and then look at hopefully responding and resolving them effectively. Now, talking about the importance of a resume, like the resume acts as a bridge between you and the prospective recruiter. So thus, it is pretty much very evident that your resume is what speaks about who you are, what you've done, what's your experience, or if you're a fresher, what are the different projects you've taken up, what's your specialization, what your internships, and the details around the same. And because it's not just one person or two who will be applying for job positions, it is very, very essential and imperative that your resume stands out from the rest. Right? Because you can imagine the recruiters are going to be screening hundreds of resumes for positions. Thus, they will not have the ability to go through each of the resumes in detail. Thus, we need to know how to structure it accordingly. Now, it is really up to each one of you to decide how you would like to be remembered by the recruiter or the hiring manager. Right? And like I said, since they don't have that much of time to interview or shortlist each and every candidate, it is really the resume which is going to do the talk for you. So your resume is really that one particular tool which is going to be your spokesperson to the corporate world. And thus, it is supremely critical that you are aware of how this needs to be put together. And it does not really mean that if you've put together a brilliant resume, you're going to be getting offers across. It's just that there will always be a fitment which every recruiter will be doing for the profile, and they will be choosing those candidates which are closest to their profile and job description. And thus, it does not really mean that if you're getting rejected, it's because your resume did not come out effectively enough. It's also because you need to keep in mind that when you're applying for job positions, you need to customize your resume each time you're applying for different jobs, right? So which means you will first have one master resume template which you will create, which will include all the important information which I'm going to talk about. And later on, as and when you're applying for jobs, please read the job description in detail and then tailor make your resume to showcase all of it that the job description is looking for and bring it across in your resume. Otherwise, it's not going to be possible that your resume is going to get selected by the recruiters, right? So thus, a well-structured, clean and precise resume is an absolute must. Now, the first thing that we need to keep in mind when you're starting to build the resume, and of course, there are templates across, there are several tools now that you get, but of course, you need to know what you need to make use of in those tools. You need to know whether the templates that you're looking at serves the purpose or not. And that's what we're going to be looking at, right? So you'll always, definitely, you'll have a ton of questions in your mind. You'll want to know what sections to include, what not to. Should I put my education first or then go ahead and talk about work experience? Am I going to talk about hobbies and interests? Will the hiring managers even look at hobbies and interests, etc.? And I'm hoping to cover some of these topics in the webinar today. So the first thing that you will include in terms of sections in the resume would definitely be to talk about and include your contact information. The second, and this for me is most important, is the resume summary or the resume objective. Right? Whenever I pick up a profile for the positions that we have posted for and I receive the resumes, the first thing that I do always as a talent acquisition expert is look at what's the summary talking about. What's the objective? What is the person wanting to tell me about why they are applying for the same? And if that is something that is not looking like a copy paste, but very much linked to what I feel the person wants to do, that's when I'm going to pick it up for further. The third one you'll talk about is work experience. The fourth one, your skill sets. And the fifth one, your education. Now for freshers, you'll obviously be talking more about your education, all about what you've covered, and most importantly, the internships and interim projects that you would have taken up, and mentioning in detail about your skills and competencies. I've also seen a lot of profiles where when you start interviewing the candidate, they speak about a lot of skill sets and certifications that they have done, but they have somehow even forgotten to mention it in the resume. Right? So then that becomes a question of authenticity for me, because I'm like, you're talking about a skill set, but it never appeared on the resume. So you need to be extremely careful to make sure you are putting out what you have definitely done, so not miss out on it, but also be very careful of not including certifications, courses, and skill kits that you've never even done. Right? Because it may look good on the profile, you may use it, and because of it, you may get shortlisted. But in the first round of screening, if you're not able to validate that, then definitely it's not going to be helpful for us. Right? So that's something that you need to be very careful about. Now we need to know what's the exact order in which you need to put each of these sections. So once we have looked at the earlier information that I spoke about in my earlier slide, you can also then look at including optional sections like hobbies or interests, languages that you are aware of, spoken, written. Certifications, extremely important, because they need to know which certifications you've done and how upskilled and continuously skilled you are. Now, if you are in the academic field or you are in the research space, definitely all the publications that you have written, the white papers that you have submitted will need to be put up here. Any training programs or leadership programs that you would have done can be mentioned. If you have received awards, excellence awards, academic excellence awards, or any rewards and recognitions in your corporate stint, if you have that, very critical that you mention that as well. Now, volunteering experience, if you have taken up any, which is give back, we call it give back to the society, that also now plays a very important role, because recruiters are also looking at who are you as a person and not just your skill sets and your education, right? The resume is going to tell the recruiters, who is this person? Who is Tanu here for me in that sense, right? So thus it's extremely important that you are talking about that as well. If you've taken up projects, do mention the projects there in detail and accurately mention the title of the projects, right? And if there are any extracurricular activities that you're a part of, which means you're part of hiking groups, you're a trekker, a cycling enthusiast, do mention all of that, because it gives more weightage. It gives the recruiter the different angles of a person that they're looking for. And thus you need to mention that as well. Now, this is one of the ways in which you can structure your resume or CV. The contact information on the top. The next that you'll talk about will be your resume summary or objective. Your work experience thereof, if you are a working professional, followed by the education aspects, all of it, all of the different specializations that you've done, your skills, and if there is still space in the resume, any optional sections from the previous slide that I spoke to you about, you could go ahead and include the same as well. Ideally, the resume should be a one-pager, not run into 2, 3, or maximum 2. A one-pager is the best, because when they open it up, they really are not going to have time to scroll too much or look at further on. So we'll need to try and put in everything in a one-pager resume as such. Now, if you're a recent graduate with no work experience, then obviously you're going to put education on top of the work experience, right? Or if you've never had any work experience because you're a complete fresher, not done anything in the industrials, taken up any projects in companies or internships, because you just focused completely on your education, then just mention all your educational aspects. So then in that case, it will be contact information, resume summary or objective, education, your skills, extracurricular activities. So in this case, if you're not going to be providing work experience because you're an absolute fresher, which means you will have sufficient space on your resume where you could include extracurricular activities, projects, and followed by the volunteering experience. Right? So this is what you're going to talk of in terms of the order in which the resume is going to be structured. And then, of course, if you're someone who has made a career change, which means you were in one particular career stream for a very long time, and then you're moving on or swapping to another career, then you need to mention a little bit about that as well. And this is how the CV will need to be organized in that case. Now, the contact information, this is which I mentioned will go on top of your CV. You need to include the following information: your full name, your job title if you are a working professional, your email address, and in the email address, extremely important that you have email addresses that sound professional and not having something a little too bizarre, right? Like I get to see a lot of email resumes like I'm a rock star or crazy about wheels at Gmail, and all of that is fine, at creating a casual email for casual correspondences. But it is highly recommended that you have an email resume which sounds very close to your name as much as possible, right? So please don't keep any of these fancy email addresses because it does not look professional. And we don't really want to see all of this as your email address. So be very careful of how your email address is even put together. Right. So if you have an email address right now, and if it falls into one of these, slightly informal categories that I mentioned, I would highly recommend that you create another email ID, which you will purely use for your job preparations, for all the purposes of applying for jobs, etc., so that it looks professional. And also, there's a separate mail ID which you're keeping exclusively for your professional development itself. Once the email address is mentioned, you can mention the location. You can just write the city. You don't really need to mention the exact complete line, the address of your house, like street name, phase and stage and all of that, because it will occupy many lines in your resume and we don't want the space to be eaten up. So just the city would be fine. And then of course the city followed by the PIN code. And then of course the phone number. Also, one thing that I would like here again to recommend is that if you're giving a phone number, it's highly recommended that you give a phone number which you yourself are using. Right? Many times I have found I've candidates, especially the freshers, who give phone numbers of their number which they're sharing with their brother or someone in the family. And if as a recruiter I'm calling in, if I'm told that this number is I'm sharing with my brother, I'm at work right now, when I go home I'll tell him to call you, that creates a lot of confusion and miscommunication. So ideal scenario, have a phone number for yourself which you will use for all of the professional purposes here, right? So do make sure you include that. I would also recommend not to give 1, 2, or 3 phone numbers. I've seen a lot of candidates give 2 to 3 numbers. Now, I don't know which number I need to pick up and call. So as a recruiter, I'm like, which number do I call, right? And sometimes I've had experiences where I call a number, that number says not reachable anymore. Then I'm taking time to call another number. And then the candidate says, can you WhatsApp me? But my WhatsApp number is something else. So please avoid all of this on a resume. Just everything needs to be clear, precise, and no confusion whatsoever. Because as a recruiter, I don't have that kind of a time, or anyone doesn't have to call 2 to 3 numbers just to get across to you to have a level of conversation. So the minute we see 2 to 3 numbers on a resume, we're like, okay, now which number do I call? So kindly have one number, one professional sounding email ID, and that's going to be very helpful. Now, an optional information I've mentioned here is as optional, but definitely, of course, your LinkedIn profile link, you could put it on the resume as well. And any other GIT hub or Behance, if you're part of that groups, you can mention that as well, especially for freshers. It's absolutely acceptable because a lot of projects, a lot of work that you've done will be put on any one of these, and use that. And if for any reason you have putting up, created your own personal website, then you could definitely include it, but that's really optional because it's going to the recruiter is going to think, what's this website about? What is the individual doing with the website, etc. So you could really avoid that. Now, both the CV, summary, and objective really is the gateway for you between you and that recruiter, because that's your introduction. Without even seeing you, if you needed to introduce someone to an unknown person, this summary or objective is going to be what's going to do the work for you. So please take sufficient time and a lot of interest when you are creating your objective. Don't please put copy pastes from the templates that you get, because those are all generic. They may not even be suited to who you are as a person or who you are as a professional, and immediately recruiters are able to make that out. So spend a lot of time, and because this is usually the very, very first thing that the recruiter reads, that is really like something that's going to break the deal here for us. So if the summary or the objective that you have written in the resume is relevant to the roles that you're applying for, that's when recruiters are going to really read the rest of the resume. If it's completely non-aligned to the role that you're applying for, and if your resume reads about something that you probably wrote when you were applying for an internship, then the recruiter is not even going to go further. They will just stop there. So they are not going to screen your resume any further. So you may be thinking, I have all the relevant skill sets, I have all the relevant certifications, but yet how come I didn't make it? That's simply because your summary or your objective, which introduces you on your resume, was not compelling enough, right? So please put together an extremely brilliant resume objective or summary. You could then mention 3 to 4 sentence summaries of your work history if you're a working professional. So a well-written CV summary, if you're working, will include the professional title, the years of experience, top 1 or 2 achievements, and the most relevant skills for that particular role that you're applying for to be highlighted. Right? Now you notice here, each time I'm stressing about the fact that it is to be relevant to the role that you're applying for. Thus, a generic resume will not help. You will have to make required changes before you apply for it. Right? So don't just apply mindlessly to several jobs without making changes to it. So for which you need to read the job description for which you're applying. Spend some time on your resume, make the necessary tweaks, and then go ahead and apply. So you'll mention the position name, the company name, the dates, very, very important here. I see so many resumes of working professionals who really don't match their dates, right? And it's mentioned incorrectly, or the years. So please double check your dates. And when I say dates, if you have done 3 job roles, and I'm going to always see, and if you have mentioned I have 3 years of experience as a data entry specialist or as a social marketing executive, the 3 years should again be mentioned in the dates. So which company, how many years? That should accurately add up to your total years of experience if you have mentioned that in the resume. Otherwise, I'm going to think what's happened if some years are not mentioned in your date line, but you're saying I've got 5 years of experience. So I'm wanting to see where are those years of experience, right? So please be very careful of dates. Mention the locations accurately. And of course, talking about responsibility and achievements for each of your job roles, just mention about 6 to 8 max and not more than that. We are not going to be reading it completely in detail, right? So that is what you will use when you're going to talk in the interview. So don't write explanation of responsibilities and achievements, just write bullet points. And then to further elaborate at the time of your interview, that's what you're going to be talking about. And also very important, as I have mentioned here, mention what your achievements have been in each of your job roles, right? Because just mentioning responsibility means you were given the responsibility to do it. But it's also interesting for an interviewer to see what your achievements have been, right? Have you excelled? So if you're a salesperson and you are given the responsibility of building the sales function for a particular region, it's also good to say, given this responsibility of building the sales for the northeastern region, I have excelled in achieving a 124% growth in my revenues from the time I took over, right? So that's his achievement. So that stands out for the recruiter. Because responsibilities, again, you can just cut and paste from everywhere. What have you done with that responsibility, which is making you stand outside of others, is what is going to be helpful for us. And that's what's going to allow you to stand out in the competition and with others, with all the others who applied for it as well. So instead of just putting responsibility, mention what your achievements are. Also, if you have done many courses, instead of just mentioning the courses, if you have achieved anything significant in your projects, in your internships, mention that as well.
Ma'am, can you just like zoom in a little bit? It's a little blur.
You want me to zoom in?
A little bit, yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah, that'll be better.
Okay. Now, also in addition, do mention make use of data and metrics to back up your achievements, right? Which is what I just mentioned. So if you say that you've increased company sales by 20%, the recruiter knows you're a high achiever. If you just say, I have increased sales, I don't know what is that increased sales mean. How much was it? So if I've just increased sales by a 0.5%, I would not call that individual to be a high achiever. Right? So if you're calling yourself as a high achiever, give data or metrics to show how that high achiever has happened for you. How have you excelled in that process? And that's the data that we would like to see, right? Because otherwise everybody is saying, I'm a great, I'm great at building great revenues. So how? Before you came in, how was the company doing with its profit and loss? And after you have come in, how much have you taken the company to with regards to its profitability? Mention those numbers. That's what's going to be standing out for you, right? Now, just a quick example of a resume for a marketing manager. Here you have mentioned managed a Google Ads advertising budget of over $15,000 per month, achieving an ROI of 62%. So this is how you need to mention when I'm talking about your achievements and not just stating it. If you just said managed a Google Ads advertising budget, then it's just going to be a statement for me. But here you're saying with that budget, which you managed, this is what I have achieved. Now that's what's important for you here. Right? Now, if you just said created high quality content, I'm going to be thinking, okay, so what's so big in that? High quality content on topics of careers and resumes, right? Then you're saying conducting partner outreach. By doing partner outreach, you are now telling how many emails you sent out and how many such partners have you onboarded. So these numbers is what matters to us. This is how it's going to tell us that this is who you are as a person with your responsibilities. This is how you have achieved. Thus, should I consider you for this role or not? If you just don't mention your achievements and just list out your responsibilities, I may probably not shortlist it. Because if I had another resume which gave me those numbers to prove your achievement, I may say, hey, you know what, this person is talking about his achievements in terms of numbers. Let me just pick that up first. And that's how it happens. Okay, so please do keep in mind, this is extremely important to give data, numbers, and metrics everywhere. Then you're talking about education. This is the format that you can mention for your education section. Type of degree and the name, the university name, and again, very important, dates. Please do mention dates accurately. I see so many resumes where the university degree, the date on that will be very different, and the dates on the resume will be very different. Now, because you may wonder, but when I'm giving the resume, who's going to check the degree? If I'm shortlisting you and I'm taking you further in the interview process, at some point in time, I am going to be asking you your certificate copies, which I will validate. And there, if it's not matching the dates in the resume that you initially gave to me, I'm going to be questioning that, right? I'm going to say, what was wrong here? And if I see that the resume dates were wrong, the first thing that's going to come to my mind is such an important information, couldn't they have got the dates right? Okay. Also, you can include additional information like GPA or your CPA or your final percentages. Any of your top academic achievements, do please mention that. It really, really adds a lot of weightage. And of course, any courses, certificates, and upskillings that you have taken. These are just some examples of an education section example where I mentioned a BA in computer science. Then I've mentioned the university where you've done it from, the years 2016 to 2020, GPA that you've taken, and a simple snapshot of what courses you took as part of your BA in computer science. So this is just an example of how the education section can be laid out. Now, this is your technical skills. This is the skill part of your resume where you'll mention your technical skills. And here is how you can just lay it out. This is the layout that you can use. It's very easy for a person who's reading it when you take up this layout, because it's very clear. I know what you've done. Rather than listing it downwards, it's always pretty important to put it in this way, because my eyes will get strained when I keep wanting to scroll down. But if it's on this layout, it's very easily visible to me. Also mention soft skills in your resume along with your technical skills. It's important that recruiters are being made aware of what your soft skills are, right? And for most job roles, teamwork, time management, flexibility, patience and tolerance, as well as verbal and written communication are pretty much the most generic soft skills that most roles will be expected by most of the recruiters, right? Teamwork, very, very important. So mention this. When you mention soft skills, it's a good indication to the recruiter to let them know that you are wanting to showcase your soft skills too, because along with technical skills, it is equal important combination contribution also of soft skills is there, and which is why this needs to be mentioned. Right? Because you can't be in a large team on projects if you're not a great team player. And if you don't, if you mention it that you are a great team player and you mention teamwork as your soft skill, it's an immediate alignment for the recruiter. Oh, okay, he's going to be a good fit. The project that he's going to get into, that we are looking at him for, involves only team projects. So he's not going to be having an issue in adapting it. So it's going to tell them immediately, okay, this is good. He's also talking, or he or she is also talking about their soft skills. Now, some tips to mention your skills section right. Make sure you mention the skills listed in the job description. That's again, like I mentioned, very important. So thus, customize, tailor make it and include it. Be realistic about your skill level, right? So be very authentic, very accurate with any information that goes on your resume. You know, we should not be putting things on the resume which later on in the interview process we are not able to validate or give sufficient reasoning and examples of, right? Even it is seen so many times. I have seen situations where candidates have really exaggerated their skill sets, may have even gotten hired, but then later on, while they are part of the role, etc., they are really not able to proceed further in performing well. And it's a very difficult situation. Then it becomes very messy. So be very, very genuine and authentic when you're putting across anything there. You can also focus on the hard skills if you are applying as a fresher. And of course, soft skills is something that you cannot show on it, but you can just mention for it. And then when you mention your soft skills, when they will analyze it is when they will be doing the interview with you. But hard skills is something that you can quantify, it can be measurable, and thus can be written out clearly and accurately on the resume. Hobbies and interests, when you're mentioning it, just list it out. No need to get into details. Like if you are saying you're a trekker or a hiker, you don't need to go around mentioning too many details about it. Just list it out, that's fine. Languages, you can list the languages that you know and also mention the skill level. For example, you can If you're just a beginner in a few languages, but you're, excellent in the other, just mention the skill level there. Certifications, if you have taken up any, mention the name of the certification and the date, expiry dates, if it has an expiry date. And like I mentioned earlier on, if you are in a research position, you're applying for a fellowship, a research-based internship, do mention the name of your articles, your white papers, links to these publications, etc. If you've taken up formal training programs, do mention the name of the program, the training provider from whom you've taken it, a simple description of what it is all about. If you've won awards, mention the awards and of course the date. And for everything that you mention on your resume, you need to have hard copies which you will be required to present to at the time of further stages of the interview. So if you feel that you're putting something on the resume, but you don't have copies of it to show later on, kindly avoid putting it on because it's going to cause issues at a later stage. If you've taken up any volunteering projects and any other extracurricular activities, just mention it in the same format that you listed out your work experience, in bullet points only and not anything in detail. Nobody's going to be reading that. But if you mention it, you're highlighting what you've done in that particular section. And if it comes up during interview, that's when you will be taking the time to elaborate the same. Now, a few things of what not to include in your resume. No need to mention the exact address. Nobody's going to be doing like an address check. At a later point in time, if you're applying for top organizations where a criminal check, background check does happen, at that time they will request you required information of your exact postal address, then you can furnish it. I don't see too many people mention date of birth in many profiles, so you can just not mention it. No need to mention social media profiles, it's really not relevant for it. Right? So if you're applying for something, for example, as an accountant, you don't really need to mention a social media website or an Insta handle. Not going to be very helpful in this type of a role. If you've done a short-term job, and if it is just for a month that you have done it, don't need to include it under the job section because it's extremely short-term. And then you're unnecessarily going to be opening it up for discussion, saying why you took it up, why you took it up only for a month, etc. So it's a short-term job as such. No need to mention any irrelevant skills or experiences which are not related to the position that you are applying for. Right? So if you're applying for a role of a software engineer, mention only those things that are applicable to that role. Not really otherwise. Otherwise, it's not going to add any value and it's just going to use up the space. No need to mention any pie charts, graphical representations, images, etc. It's going to look very confusing. Nobody's going to be wanting to spend time figuring out all of that. So they'll automatically want to discard your profile. So no need to mention all of that. Now, if you're a working professional and is doing, taken a break for studies, but you wanted to mention your work experience, don't mention too much of the work history, right? They don't have to know all of that. So the first top 3 jobs that you were currently working on were working, the current role and 2 other job roles. You can mention the work experience in detail, but after that, just list out the companies. No need to go and mention your work history, roles and responsibilities for each of it, right? In that sense. So a quick few takeaways that I'm going to do before we go into the next section. Make sure in your resume, like I mentioned, mention the most important essential information, and for me this would be contact details, resume summary, work experience, education and skills. These are critical in everything. Others are optional. Optional sections here would be extracurricular, projects, certifications, hobbies. Relevant information is what is important for us. Only mention skills and experiences. That is going to tell us how you performed there. And like I have already mentioned, anything that is backed by numbers, metrics, and data is what is going to help you stand out or increase your chances of your resume being shortlisted by the recruiters or the talent acquisition teams. Any questions before I go to the next section on ATS resume? Any questions, Abhishek, from anyone? All right. I'm going to move on. Looking at ATS, applicant tracking system, is what now a lot of organizations are using because they get innumerable number of applications and they are not able to have it to be tracked and screened otherwise. So there are a few things that you can keep in mind when you are writing an ATS resumes. Now, this is a number that I have where 70% of applications get disqualified without being read, right? So that's how the tracking system works, because it's not a human, it's a system, it's a software which has been built keeping in mind a few set of information which the talents team have decided should be used, and thus it's going to be important how you're going to be using a resume which works here. So an ATS is an applicant tracking system, which is a software which the employers use to manage the entire application process, and now most companies do that. From an end-to-end of the application process, it all happens through this. So the ATS will collect, scan, and rank the applications. And initially, it was only used by large organizations, but now most of the companies are using ATS, and because it's really helps them in screening, because there are thousands of applications which come in for each professional. Now, this is a very productive system, which is why companies use it. It helps them in narrowing down, saves on time, and really saves on paper. Don't need to print and go through stacks of everything, gets organized through the online system. And thus, it's very important that in the ATS, you're dividing the resume into different sections: work experience, education, skills, languages, and certifications. Now, this is a sample of a resume summary. If you're applying for a tax manager position, this is how the ATS will read it. Highly driven tax manager with 5+ years of financial experience in managing tax returns and affairs, proven experience of success, employer satisfaction, and strong communication skills. So if this is how you have written it, this is how the ATS will read it. It will read as tax manager, 5 years, tax returns and affairs, employee satisfaction, strong communication skills. So the ATS will pick out keywords from your sentence that you have put, and what it will do is it will match this keyword to the list of requirements for that particular job for which you have actually posted. Now, if there is a match, only then the ATS is going to go ahead with it. If there is no match at all, then the ATS is not even going to go ahead, which is why I said that it's important that you read the job description and then custom make your resume to include those keywords which are going to be picked up or identified when the screening happens. Now, how to create an ATS resume? There is several formats available, so please do some research on it. The easiest format for an ATS is to reverse chronological order. So that is how it is put. The format will emphasize by putting your work experience on top of the page. Choose the appropriate file type. So a PDF file is universal, and that is how you need to create your resume in. And that is something that most ATS will read. So a PDF file format is fine. Now, PDF files are also great for maintaining the design and format of your resume, which means when you are creating your resume, you can create it or use the Word first, but eventually convert it into a PDF while sharing it, right? So it's very simple. Just create it in Word, go to save as, and you'll say save as PDF, and it gets saved as PDF. However, there are some cases where the ATS systems don't read PDFs, some older ones. So before applying for the position, check what the job ad says. So the job ad will mention which file format you need to submit your resume in. So please pay attention to details before submitting it, right? It shouldn't say, oh, ma'am said PDF, but so many times, I don't think it's worked through. So the job ad will tell you resume format to be submitted in, and it will list out the options. So look at that and then use that format and go ahead and start using that. If that ATS job ad, if it is mentioning explicitly that you should apply only in a Word document, it means to say that their ATS that they are using in that company cannot read PDF, which is why they're asking you to submit in a Word file. So kindly use this format only. So the ATS, the job description or the job ad will give you all the necessary details you need to keep in mind while applying for their ATS resume itself. So tailor make your resume and make all of those changes before you go ahead and apply for it. Many applicants get rejected for using resume templates that ATS cannot read. So don't spend too much money on some really fancy templates, because it is something that may not be compatible in their systems. So it is crucial that you pick a tried and tested ATS friendly template. You can also do some significant research. You can speak to some people in the talent acquisition community to help you with these templates, and then use those as well. Now, label your sections right. Again, very important. This seems like obviously anybody will do it, but make sure you're labeling your sections. So make sure to list your work experience under work experience, skills under skills, etc. Because that's the only way for ATS to recognize what it is reading. So mention the highlight of the section, and below it mention all the information that needs to go below that particular aspect. Keywords are short words or phrases which are very important. So the system scans for these words to find the best candidate. So it is essential that you're using the right keywords when you're putting it on the resume, so that when it is getting scanned, the actual keywords are going to be picked out. Right? There are two types of keywords that you should look out for. One will be job-related skills, and two will be the action verbs. So job-related skills will mean examples like data analysis, research, problem solving, etc. Action verbs in your resume will mean what you have accomplished and succeeded in your job position. So keywords for action verbs will be created, maximized, solved, etc. So if you're mentioning all of this, then this is what the ATS will read, right? So after you've scanned the job posting, make a list of these keywords and you can mention it in your resume. However, keep in mind that you shouldn't just randomly throw the keywords, which means, you may just go to Google and then say, give me a list of the most popular keywords for ATS resume. Now Google is going to throw up a set of words there. Please don't go ahead and put all of that, and only put those which are relevant for the job description, right? Because at the end of the day, even if your resume gets passed by the ATS and it lands up at the recruiter's desk, they are going to be analyzing it. So it is not just a system which will always do the screening. Eventually it will come to the human, and when they look at it, if it is very irrelevant, they will know that you've just put a bunch of keywords available for ATS, and then you're hoping that you made through it. So it's very important that you keep that in mind. Please don't use acronyms. Some ATS systems can't read acronyms. So it is recommended to pull out the whole word. Bachelor of Public Administration, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Commerce, whatever it is, spell it out completely, because some don't read, short forms. So this is a social media expert job ad sample that I have put for you here, just for you to get an idea. Develop and execute short media strategy. So this is how responsibilities should look like. And this is the requirements that it is going to be mentioned. right? So keywords like develop, analyzing, and strategy can be used in work experience section. Under the skills section, you can just list the ad skills that the job ad is looking for. CRO, SEO, data analytics, multitasking. So whatever it is mentioned there, you can go ahead and put that out. This is one example of how a resume can be for an ATS resume sample. So as you can see, very simple, just the picture in the center, and then the details on the right-hand side of the different links, email, phone number, and the LinkedIn links. Simple job, work experience, education, any personal projects, interests, technical skills, and languages, all together packed into one. Now we're going to go into Chat GPT. Just going to be doing very, very high level here. One, because it's extremely debatable the how much to use Chat GPT for using resume, and also because there is a lot of information which I don't think I would want to cover right away, but I'll just touch upon some important things to keep in mind if you're going to be using Chat GPT for your resume writing. So obviously the Chat GPT is a great resume writing assistant. It will help you when you really don't know how to write effectively, how to explain your objective, accomplishment, etc. So thus it will help you how to put together a great job description if you're not someone who's great at writing content. However, it's extremely important that you use Chat GPT with great discretion, right? Because if you use something which the Chat GPT is giving to you without validating the information and reading it to see if it makes sense or not, it is going to be get detected when a recruiter is going to make use of it. Also, please don't put anything in your resume which you don't even know has been put. You're going to get caught at the time of your interview itself. So thus, if you've put something saying that I have managed all of this in my sales career, I have executed these many deliverables, I have met this much of target, but if you've never done it, you're going to be completely clueless. So all these Chat GPT formats will give you a lot of information on everything. So if you say sales experience for someone with 10 years of experience, how should my work accomplishments look or work description look like? It will give you a beautiful paragraph. So if you just blindly copy paste it, you won't be able to answer any questions which a recruiter may ask. I recently had somebody whom I was recruiting for a senior sales manager role, and I could see after about 3 minutes into the conversation, his resume was built using a Chat GPT, and he had mentioned so much beautifully written roles and responsibilities, which means like he was the person made for the job. And then I quizzed about it. I said, how do you say you have done it? How did you meet these targets? How are you saying you're an exceptional team leader? And then he said, ma'am, where is this written? And I said, it in your resume. You have written it. It is your resume I'm reading out from. So he was so clueless. And then I said, do you want to talk more about it? And he was so embarrassed. He said he just disconnected the phone call, and that was the end of it. I never spoke to him after that. So be very careful when it comes to that. Obviously, resume process using Chat GPT is great. It gives you multiple variants of achievements. It helps you create summaries that matches your specification. It provides a model response to a job description, and it will help you tailor the resume to each job. Yes, these are all the benefits of using Chat GPT. But what happens on the dark side of it, or the risk, is that it's not really you. It's just somebody who has felt that this is the best way of putting it together, and it won't be authentic enough. The second risk is most of the responses are not tailor-made. It will just come out the same. And at the end of the day, I've already said that you have to tailor-make your resumes for your job description that you're applying for, which means you see you have to do a whole lot of further customization even if you've used this. So thus, extreme discretion to be applied while using ChatGPT. The third thing is that we have assumed that AI can't make risks or mistakes. That's not true, because now detection is also happening, which means people are using detection softwares to see whether it is written actually or it is an AI generated one. And not every time whatever is coming out through AI is is actually right. So please, you'll have to do several amounts of research, validate what's coming out, and only then go ahead and use it, and not blindly use it. Some key takeaways: Chat GPT is a writing companion, but don't just allow it to do the entire job for you. You need to invest time and research in it once even if you've made use of it. Right? A creative and thoughtful prompt which you use from your end will give you an interesting output. So the kind of prompt you put also is dependent on you. It won't be able to think what you want out of it. So you need to be very mindful of that. Authenticity is again very important in a job search. And I'm going to be always looking at authenticity if I'm a recruiter. And thus it will be caught somewhere in the process. So at the same time, the resume should still sound like you. So even if you have made use of the best chat GPT formats, you have validated it, you feel it's good to go, give it to someone to proofread it for you. Run it through a lot of people and take their opinions to see what they feel when they look at that resume, and only then go ahead and apply it with organizations. Right? Now, this is one sample of how a resume is written by an individual. Which is something not highly recommended. This is the recommended way of writing a resume, where you've put the personal information all neatly structured on the right-hand side with the skill sets, education, work history, volunteering, certifications, and languages. So if you look at both the formats, see, if you look at this one, it's looking like I may just want to flip through it and not spend too much time, but this is like to the point. It's like so brief, and immediately one glance, I don't even need to spend more than a minute, and I get complete idea of what Pradeep Kohli is and whether I want to move him ahead as such. So these are some things that I wanted to share in the session today.